You ready to go?
Yes, the floor is yours.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'll call this meeting to order. Diana, can you do a roll call, please?
Your Worship, I can confirm that Councillor Scott Lewis, IT Manager Cecil Coxon, and myself, Deputy Clerk Diana Wilson, are in attendance in the council chambers. For those participating by video conference, please answer present when your name is called. Mayor Manal,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Present.
Councillor Woodner,
Present.
Councillor Moore,
Present.
Councillor Cerna,
Present.
Councillor Galinsky,
Present.
Chief Administrative Officer, Clerk Michelle Casavecchia Summers,
Present.
Director of Fire and Emergency Services Brent Smith,
Present.
Director of Public Works Matt Sweetland,
Present.
Director of Finance Arun Mohili,
Present.
Director of Development Services Adam Betteridge.
Present.
That's everyone.
Thanks, Diana. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none. The minutes from December 17th. Any errors or omissions? Mover and seconder of the minutes, please.
Move it.
Moved by Moore, seconder,
I'll second it.
Cerna, all in favor.
Councillor Woodner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manal,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. Next on the agenda, we have a public meeting. The purpose of the public meeting is to consider an application to permit a use described as a place of worship to occur on a temporary basis submitted by Tony Wall on behalf of Dwight and Linda Stevens, Part Lot 21, Concession 3, Geographic Township Malahide, being known as 6242 Springfield Road. Diana, can you advise and confirm method and date of notice, please?
Your Worship, there is one resolution we should do first.
Okay, what did I miss? Oh, sorry, thank you, Diana. Mover and second, a public meeting concerning zoning bylaw amendment application of Tony Wall on behalf of Dwight and Linda Stevens relating the property located at Lot 21, Concession 3, be called to order at 7:32. Mover and seconder.
I'll move it.
Lewis, Cerna, all in favor?
Councillor Woodner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manal,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. Diana, can you advise and confirm the method date of notice, please?
Yes, I can, Your Worship. Notice of the meeting was given in the prescribed manner by publication in the Elmer Express on December 16th and the 23rd. In addition, affected property owners within 120 meters were sent a notice by prepaid first-class mail posted 20 days prior to the meeting.
Thank you. Adam, can you give us an overview?
Certainly, Your Worship. The application has been submitted by Tony Wall on behalf of the property owners to permit a use described as a place of worship to occur on a temporary basis. It is proposed that the place of worship would occur within the existing 3,200 square foot shop recently constructed on this subject property. Although the shop was not constructed for a church purpose, the property owners are willing to make the necessary building upgrades in order to conduct church services temporarily for a portion of the congregation that they belong to. I do know that the applicant, Mr. Tony Wall, is registered to speak this evening, and I believe he will speak to the council further about the circumstances their congregation is facing and why the use to occur for a temporary period of time at this location is important to them. But as stated previously, such use would occur only while public health restrictions are in place for social gatherings due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. After such time, it is proposed that the use would cease. The council will note that I've included in my report the fact that the applicable planning documents that municipalities are to evaluate applications against, being the provincial policy statement, the official plan for both Malahide and the county, and finally, the township zoning bylaw were not written or structured to contemplate for such rare or widespread spreading occurrences such as the global pandemic we're currently dealing with. However, I have raised concerns for the council to consider my report. Firstly, given the needed investment both physically to the property and necessary upgrades to the building, there could be expressed desire to allow this use or another agricultural use, or sorry, non-agricultural use to continue permanently after the pandemic. In my discussions with Mr. Wall prior to him submitting the application, I was quite clear with him that the provincial policy statement and the Malahide official plan do not permit for the establishment of a new institutional use anywhere in the agricultural area of the township. Such uses are clearly intended for settlement areas identified in the official plan. There is one exception made for large-scale institutional uses such as hospitals and schools, where large parcels of land needed are rarely available in a settlement area, but this is not that scenario. Secondly, it is also my opinion that this proposed temporary church use is not and should not be considered as an on-farm diversified use as permitted to occur in prime agricultural areas by the province. Those on-farm diversified uses generally are those uses defined and established by the province in support of agriculture that allow a farmer to supplement their income with a secondary farm occupation, or allow a commercial and or industrial use that are directly related to and support agriculture and are required to be in close proximity to agriculture, such as a grain elevator, and also uses that allow our agricultural areas to be promoted through agritourism and recreational uses such as say seasonal pumpkin patches and like wineries. So it's my opinion, and I think the PPS is quite clear, that churches are not considered on-farm diversified uses. Lastly, temporary use bylaws should not be used where the proposed use is not permitted to occur in the applicable designation of the official plan. New institutional uses are not to be established, whether temporary or otherwise, in the agricultural designation of the Malahide official plan, except for the exception for large schools and hospitals I spoke about earlier. Given this assessment, it is my opinion that the application is not consistent with the directives of the provincial policy statement and does not directly conform with the Township of Malahide official plan. And as such, and together with the additional concerns I spoke to earlier and are included in my report, I am recommending to the Township Council that the application by Mr. Tony Wall be denied. Before I continue, I'm hearing some feedback. Is someone trying to say something? No? Okay, I'll continue. With regard to comments received, I have considered and summarized the comments from the Catfish Creek Conservation Authority and the Southwestern Public Health Unit in my report. Detailed code requirements, if the proposal is indeed to move forward, were provided by the fire chief and CBO and forwarded directly to Mr. Wall. Since the writing of my report, the council should be aware that there has been 2 pieces of written correspondence received by the township. The first piece of correspondence is from Josh and Ashley Couchy, who reside in Mount Salem. They are opposed to the application. And the second piece is from Ted and Nina Coghill, who own lands adjacent to the subject property to the north. They are also opposed to this application. The Coghill's correspondence raises multiple concerns with the proposal, including the building meeting applicable building codes, how often and how frequent services will be held, how garbage and waste will be handled on the property, the impacts to surrounding agricultural operations, especially during planting and harvesting seasons, and finally, how a church can gather at all during a pandemic, and the precedence that this might cause when other churches are using online means to gather. I've noted in my report, in addition to my recommendation this evening, that the proposed use, if permitted to occur on even a temporary period of time, will still be subject or need to be subject to all applicable fire and building code requirements, as well as the health unit requirements also. With this, if the council does decide to move forward with and support the application, it is advisable that the council stipulate that the use be subject to site plan control, which would ensure that such matters as on-site parking, emergency access, washrooms, and any other on-site facilities required by fire, building, or the health unit would be appropriately provided and addressed. It is also recommended that if the application is approved, and this is in my report, that the temporary use bylaw be limited to a period of no more than 12 months. Your worship, this does conclude my summary of the application. However, I can answer any questions if they arise.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Tony, have you got anything to add?
Well, Adam's worded that very well. I've been aware of all the criteria that he has brought out forth. Again, we're in a situation where, especially during COVID-19, well, during the lockdown, obviously we're not gathering together, but when we were still allowed to gather together as a church, as a congregation, just it comes down to community. We're a church that loves the Lord and we love serving, and it gives us opportunity when we can be together. Unfortunately, due to our existing building and the size of our congregation, it's been something that's been talked about for a while, about splitting into a sister church. So we still have the, we'll call it the mother church or whatever, but the main building still back in the Norfolk Township. But we have members from Malahide, members from Bayham, and from Norfolk that all congregate together. And again, during this COVID-19, an opportunity to break off as a sister church, which in turn is what we're looking to do, is just to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. And as the church seems to grow, whether it's through families or visitors, right now, due to COVID regulations, we've been gathering together as a private religious meeting. So we're not exactly open to the public. It's just basically the same members that have been getting together. And again, it just gives us an opportunity to get together. The Stevens family have graciously offered their building because there was no other public buildings available, whether in Norfolk or in Bayham or in Malahide Township, available to rent for the size of the congregation we're splitting into. So at this point, yeah, we were just looking for a place to congregate and to be able to facilitate a place of worship for us as a group to get together and to strengthen us emotionally, physically, just during this time of COVID-19.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Diana, any comments received from outside agency or landowners?
Your worship, we only received the 4 pieces of correspondence that our director has mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Members of council, any questions for either Tony or Adam?
I have a question. Thank you. This question is for Tony through you, sir. Tony, you're talking about getting 150 people together. Is that not against the rules?
Well,
Like
right now,
I thought. Sorry, go ahead.
no, we were just basing it on the square footage of the building. So with 3,200 square feet of space, we can facilitate, according to what building code would say, is 400 people, but we don't have 400 people that would come. So
Right, but
due to COVID-19 regulations, we were reduced down to 1/3 our occupancy, which on our original previous meeting place, we've got a congregation of over 400 people. So it wasn't making sense with the building occupancy that we had and splitting it into 1/3, the amount of cleaning for sanitation and everything else that we were doing. It was to a point where it's like, we've been wanting to break off as a sister church for some time. So at this point here, we've got, we've split our congregation. And again, we were looking for a facility to accommodate the group size that has broken off to start a new sister church. And again, due to COVID-19, we are limited to 1/3 occupancy of what the building requires. And in this case here with the Stevens property, the shop with the math, the way you work it out, it would facilitate 400, but we're not doing that. So 1/3 would be approximately between 120 to 150 people.
I further to that, to follow up is I thought under this legislation for lockdown or whatever, that you were only allowed 10 people in an indoor meeting, regardless of the size of the building.
During lockdown, yes, we were not congregating together at all during the lockdown. But there was a
Okay, but
time
even
during,
after the rules before lockdown said 5 people, I
No.
think, or was 5 people indoors and 10 people outdoors or something?
there was,
I mean,
yeah.
Okay, and it might go back to that.
And
why
if
you-
it does,
Go ahead.
if it does, yes, then we have to patiently wait. But
Right.
again, we're looking to facilitate and try to accommodate when the window opens, that we can have that opportunity to gather together.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for either Tony or Adam?
Mr.
Tony?
Mayor, thank you. Through you, probably my first question to staff, other than zoning, are there other implications in terms of property tax exemption or rebates for an institution or place of worship?
Through you, your worship, I may lean on the treasurer, but to my knowledge, these places of worships aren't subject to assessment. So I don't believe there would be an impact. I hope that answers your question.
Any further comment from the director, from the treasurer?
No, I think Adam has summarized it quite well. Places of worship are exempt from taxes.
If I may jump in, just one more thing. So yes, places of worship are exempt from taxation. However, the current building being used for an agricultural building, I would assume on an agricultural property, it's being used for an agricultural building. There are taxes that are being generated by it. So in the event this was become a place of worship and become exempt, then those taxes would no longer be collected that may be being collected at the moment. Although I haven't looked at the tax account, so I don't know what the nature of that amount might or might not be.
Okay, and as a follow-up through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps to you, Tony. So what, if not this location, what other options are you looking at?
Currently, right now, there is none available for COVID-19. So unless somebody has an idea of when this is all going to be over, which generally nobody seems to know, we're trying to find a place that we can gather together during this time, just to build up community, to build each other up, to strengthen our faith, as well as each other. And again, as COVID-19 rules, they change based on cases and what's going on. It's kind of a day by day, month by month. Again, we are intending not to stay. And even if it means signing a waiver or some sort, that this is not intending to be a permanent location for a place of worship. That has never been the intent. I know the brothers generally would not want to do that to the Stevens family. Again, they operate a farm, and I know this is inconveniencing them slightly, but they're blessed enough that, or we're blessed enough to allow them, they're allowing us to come and to be able to participate. At least right now, we're not doing anything at all, but that was our intent anyway.
One more
Any
question.
other? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
one more. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Tony, what about parking? Is there, like, obviously there's not a parking lot there or anything. Is there enough room if all these people go there?
Yeah, so if again, I'll just use the maximum numbers at 150. The average family is about 5 in our congregation. So we're looking realistically between 20 and 30 cars. I had the privilege of going out on site with Brent and with Scott, the CBO, and the laneway itself is already gravel, and we have gravel currently going right up to the front entrance door. So again, in the line of work that I do, I understand about fire safety and I understand about public safety, that should anything occur, heaven forbid, that we'd want to make sure that fire and ambulance would have easy and direct access to the front door of that building. We already had talked about getting a number of fluorescent cones, like the parking cones, and just designating the parking to ensure that everybody knows there's an orderly fashion parking. We've got over 20 acres on the property, so there's ample room to be parking on there. And again, of course, is to leave that minimum setback for the fire route for should there be, if anything would happen.
Okay, thank you, Tony.
Any other questions for Tony or Matt or Adam?
Mr.
Dominique?
Mayor, if I may, so have you also explored, so this question for Tony, have you also explored virtual means or, the drive-in or like, I'm trying to hear more about everything that you've explored and why this is, I would see this as it's quite an expense, so it would be a last resort, and other ways that we could support you.
Well, again, we've attempted to do the online, and due to our technology, we were really limited to what we could do. We were trying to do the pre-recorded messages to listen to at home during the last lockdown that we had. And again, it seemed to work, but again, we're naturally people that are drawn to each other. And I guess even in this Zoom meeting itself, it seems very different, very strange. I'm not as familiar in working in with council. I've had some opportunities to be in council meetings, but yeah, definitely feels somewhat impersonal. But to make that connection, to be in person, to see eye to eye, to hear, again, it's about building each other up in our faith, strengthening one another, especially during this COVID-19, where we have people that are being affected financially due to jobs, emotionally, spiritually. And again, it's just about doing what God's called us to do, is to build each other up and just to strengthen one another.
Yeah.
Mark, you do have a question?
Just to conclude, Mr. Mayor, through you, yeah, and I appreciate that. I think even as council, this is not an ideal way. I think everybody is affected, and everybody is compromising on and making a sacrifice for what would be a better and ideal way to work. And so it appears to me that if the congregation is willing to invest quite a bit of capital into a facility, perhaps looking into that, reinvesting towards technology that would support or the different alternatives that you might actually be able to use beyond the pandemic, to not be, as the director of development said, that would not be actually attached and fixed, and rather portable. So,
and that's something that we were still working through as brothers. Again, the feasibility behind it. We want to be good stewards with the money that we've got. And again, I only had the privilege of meeting Scott and Brent on site on January the 4th, where then Adam put together this letter based on Scott and Brent discussing what they would like to see. We haven't priced out these items that we're working through that right now. So we don't actually have we'll say a budget number of what this is going to cost, but feasibility, this is where we will have to figure out, and again, trust in with our elders and our deacons together with the funds. What are we looking at here? Is this feasible for us to move forward? Yes or no? That's a decision we can't make yet until we know and direct from Malahide Township on, okay, is this even a possibility for us to venture through?
Thank you.
Mark, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess, Tony, I appreciate your passion about this. It seems pretty good. Let's just throw a number out. If you had to spend 60 to 100,000, would it be a feasible project?
That's a big number.
Well, it might be that number. Trouble, eh?
Well, again, that's where I don't know if that's the case or not. I know we've got some capable hands as brothers in various contracts and trades that we have in our congregation to help keep some of these costs down. But again, until we can sit down and figure out, okay, these are the numbers we're looking at, brothers, yay or nay, is this feasible or not? Because again, we are intending to make this a temporary basis. So I guess realistically, when I originally had sent something over to Adam in regards to what we would figure as a rough quote, again, I was only speculating at maybe a few $1,000s. And realistically, after my meeting with Brent and with Scott and looking through, obviously we're looking at more than that, but this is a decision I can't make on myself. This is something I want to present to the brethren, because it's not just me, we're all contributing together, and we want to count the cost.
Okay, thank you. If I could just ask Brent, do you have any concerns about this? What are your concerns, if I could ask Brent? Thank you.
The concerns that I had were that the building is not originally designed as an assembly type of occupancy. When we're congregating considerable amounts of people together, it presents different issues when it's being used as a storage or an implement type of building. So as Tony had mentioned, both Scott and I had met him there. We did a walkthrough of not just the building, but the exterior of the building as well, and pointed out the things that we believe are of the biggest concern when it comes to fire and life safety. And that was what we've presented. And if all of those things can be met, I have no objection beyond making sure that the building meets fire and life safety. But that's about the only thing that I can speak to from my expertise as the fire chief.
Thanks, Brett. Any other questions from council? Jess?
Just a thought. The term sister church came up earlier in the presentation, and that would mean a split of the church that's there already. And I think if we go through with this, there is a split. After 12 months, things change. And after the cost of what it's going to cost to make it livable as a church, I'm afraid that we're looking at a place that might be considered as a permanent place of worship. And I'm not sure that's the intent of where we are going as a council. But that's just my thought. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jess. Any other questions or comments? Just a final comment from myself, Tony. Obviously, there's concern not only from the neighbors, but from staff as well. It looks like a lot of expense for a very short-term basis. I think that was probably paramount in my mind, is that is there not other alternatives rather than putting money into something that may only be around for 6 months to less than a year for certain? Any comment?
Yes, and again, that's where we've kind of got to do our due diligence. And like I said, I've just got this information now on what I guess the criteria from Brent and from Scott, just to get the building basically up to a level of where we can have a place of worship. Again, once we put the numbers together, it'll be one of those things where we just need to get a direction from Malahide Township that if this is something we can entertain and move forward with, okay, let's put our budget numbers together. Let's see where we're at, but at least we know that we've got a direction we can move forward, and we've got the direction and the council from Malahide Township.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Rick, one more question?
Yeah, well, not just a question, but a comment. I'm just wondering if we're not putting the cart before the horse. But you want approval to do this from Malahide Council. Oh, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor Tony. But you want us to grant you permission, and then you're going to go and find out all your information. Why don't you go and find out all your information first and then come back to us and say, yeah, we think it's feasible. Because by the time you're done all your information about what it's going to take to make this building work or not, okay, you guys might look at it and say, we're not taking up 2 collections a day to pay for this. So I think we're getting the cart before the horse. And if anything, I just might say defer, Mr. Mayor.
You make a very good point, Rick, and I agree with you. Obviously, the decision whether we go forward or not is going to be with Tony's congregation. I suggest that we defer this for another meeting, and Tony can go back and obviously you've got the request from our fire chief as well as the building inspector. You can get an estimate of what this is going to cost. And if the congregation is not in favor of this, then it's a moot point. Is that agreeable with council?
Yeah.
I see heads nodding.
Yeah, it's good with me.
Okay. So if there's no other questions for either Tony or Adam, we'll reconvene. So mover and seconder public meeting relating to zoning bylaw amendment application of Tony Wall on behalf of Dwight and Linda Stevens related to the property located lot 21. Concession 3 be adjourned and council reconvene at 7:58. Mover and seconder.
Move.
Moore and Serna, all in favor? Diana?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manal,
Yes.
carried.
Thank you. And now mover and seconder report number DS 2101 entitled zoning bylaw amendment application of Tony Wall on behalf of Dwight and Linda Stevens be received and that we have a deferral on the decision. Mover and seconder,
I'll move it.
Serna, seconder,
I'll second. Jiguer.
Jagger, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jiguer,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes.
carried.
Thank
Your
you.
worship, just for clarification, my understanding of the deferral is that it's dependent on more information being submitted by the applicant. So we would be anticipating that Mr. Wall would reach out to the municipality when he's ready for council to reconsider the application, or essentially not reconsider, my apologies, to move forward with the application and going from there. There would not be any additional public meetings. This would be the public meeting that has been held regarding the application, but council is interested in having more information before it makes its final decision. And so we would await more information from Mr. Wall before we move forward.
That would be correct. Is that good for you, Tony?
Yes, sir. That would be fine by me.
Okay, well, we'll put it back in your ballpark.
Okay. Thank you again.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you again.
Nay.
Is Chris here?
Yes, sir.
There he is. Hi, Chris.
How you doing?
Council would ask you to attend our meeting, just to give us an update on your budget and where Catfish Creek is going in 2021. So I'll pass it over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Worship. I've got 6 slides and I think we're starting on page 51 of the agenda package. So I don't have the ability to share screen or anything. I wasn't planning on that. Just thought folks would follow along with in the package.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so page 51. So thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity to speak with you today about the 2021 draft budget for the Catfish Creek Conservation Authority. And yeah, there's 4 slides that have some budget related information, and then thought if there's any questions, we could do that afterwards. So slide 52 just sort of goes through or page 52 of the package, sorry, goes through the 2021 budget process, various steps. So step 1 involved staff presenting options of 1% and 4.2% to the authority board members. 4.2% was the proposed levy increase from the Catfish Creek's 2019 business plan, a 5-year business plan. So step 2 involved a draft budget that was approved on November 28th, 2020 with a 3% levy increase. The step 3 involves circulation of the draft budget approved above to municipalities on December 2nd, and that's for a 30-day appeal under the Conservation Authority Act levy regulation. And during this period and beyond until prior to meeting at the next personnel finance meeting, as the general manager, have the opportunity to present information to municipalities and take any questions that councils may have regarding our draft budget. So the final step is a vote to approve the budget at the authority's first full meeting, meeting, which happens on March 11th, 2021, hopefully in person. So moving to slide page 53. So beginning of the process, we sought direction from the board, and the board decided that we were going to deliver the same or an improved level of service for 2021. So I think that's an important point. So the levy that we provided the information to formaldehyde is a 3% increase, and equates to $3,864.81 for a total of $137,241.94. The levy is calculated on the MPAC, so Municipal Parcel Assessment Corporation's assessed value of land within the watershed. And as a result of the increase in municipal tax assessment from activities such as the construction of new houses, the cost per 100,000 of assessed value decreases in this proposed budget by more than 50 cents. Therefore, a typical $300,000 house will pay $37.71 in 2021 as compared to $39.03 in 2020. I reviewed the Conservation Authority statistical survey, and Catfish Creek has the lowest municipal levy of any conservation authority in the province by far. we have a budget of $1.3 million. Authorities with similar budget requests, significantly more in levy dollars. The next closest levy is almost double at $615,000, and the authority only has a budget of just over $800,000. The reason that Catfish Creek is in this position is historically thanks to spring water. The revenue from spring water, we're able to put back into our mandated and our core programs in order to support programs like flood control. Many other conservation authorities don't have this luxury, this flexibility, these assets of land that generate the revenue that allow us to offset the cost of delivering provincially mandated programs. The budget this year has been adjusted, as with previous years, to reflect the anticipated workload in the various program areas. The board approved a draft budget with an increase of $12,000 for mandated programs to an increase of $483,000. 35% of the Catfish Creek budget is based on what is currently known in the scope of mandated programs. And every year for the past couple of years, it's my third year presenting to council, I provide a number of the funding shortfall from the province. And this year it's finally topped $200,000, up from $195,000 shortfall in 2020. Moving to the next slide, just describes some of the challenges that we've had. So some of the pressures in developing this budget: 15% insurance increase to property tax, significant increase to employment taxes. We are having to, based on the number of people that are using spring water right now, it is just absolutely skyrocketing. We have to put some of the money back into spring water and to offset the cost. We have to put the money back into spring water to accommodate the increase in users, the increase in safety measures, increased security, all these types of things. So that this year we don't have that luxury that we've had in previous years to put that revenue from spring water back into mandated programs. We have to put it back into the land program this year, we have to, in order to support the increase of users. We're having increase in technology and software licenses, and there is no cost of living increase this year for staff. Staff are not taking that cost of living increase. The draft budget 2021 proposes to use $117,000 from our reserves to balance our 2021 budget. There's some numbers there, 41,000, for example, to balance administration. We're also purchasing a new vehicle for $34,000 this year. The board made a decision to dip into the reserves to balance this year's budget. The 3% minimizes the impact to the reserves. So my final slide is just a little insight into the 2022 budget and some of the changes and some of the things we've seen as a result of Bill 229. So I want to take this opportunity to discuss with members with councillors what to expect in 2022. The regulations associated with the recent amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act as part of Schedule 6 of Bill 229 are still not developed. A working group has been established by the minister to determine the content of the regulations, including what are precisely those mandatory and non-mandatory programs. Any determination of what is to be considered mandatory or non-mandatory in 2021 is purely speculative. One thing we do know is the province is expecting agreements with municipalities for the use of levy dollars for anything, for mandated or non-mandated programs. In our budget, we're presenting the use of $5,000 of municipal levy dollars to assist to offset the cost of delivering our information and education program. In 2022, it seems as though we'll need an agreement with our municipal program partners to use this levy money for outdoor education, which is a non-mandated program. Another upcoming need in the watershed is to update our floodplain mapping for communities at risk, such as Port Bruce. This is going to take some money and would be accomplished perhaps through a successful grant application through the federal government to the National Disaster Mitigation Program. Another thing we know from Bill 229 is the planning process is no longer linear and introduces a number of appeal routes and options for proponents. CCA has been well under the provincial standard for permit turnaround for basic and complex permits on a consistent basis. We've had zero hearings or appeals in the last decade. And we are preparing in 2021 for the added complexity resulting from the sudden and seismic changes to the Conservation Authorities Act. Finally, most authorities levy municipalities with both a capital and operational levy. This could be an option for CCCA. We've only ever dealt with an operational levy for us to deal with some deficits and infrastructure requirements as outlined in our recently published draft Springwater Master Plan. As mentioned previously, we've always put money back into our non-land, from the lands program into our non-lands program to offset the costs. We do in fact, and like I said before, we need to make some changes to Springwater so we don't have that luxury this year. So that's my presentation, Your Worship. So back to you or the CAO. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And from my perspective, I know that the Catfish runs on a shoestring budget, and that I know a lot of your fundraising activities with the Maple Syrup Festival last year was canceled. And this year is kind of dubious, and to keep it even at 3%, you've done extremely well. So congratulations, even at the 3%. So that's my perspective. But I will open it up to council. Any questions for Chris? Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I take a different view. I appreciate the Maple Syrup Festival, but we know it's not a mandated program. And I guess one thing I'm not clear on, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Chris, is that when I look at your financial statements, so your statement this evening is that you use revenue from non-mandated programs to fund mandated programs. But when I look at your financial statements for the last few years, your line for your revenue from the levy plus your revenue from your provincial grants add up pretty much to your expenses on mandatory program plus all your admin line. So, and it seems like, so the other lines like the Maple Syrup Festival, the Springwater, seem to be separate. So I'm not sure I fully understand that argument. And
I can
yeah,
respond to that.
so I guess that's my first question.
Yeah, we'll take them one at a time. So we
Go
have
ahead, Chris.
400 through you, Your Worship, back to Councillor Giguère. We have, I don't have the number really, it's quite handy in a calculator, but I believe it's $483,000 for mandatory programs this year. That is up $12,000. Our total levy is $330,000. We get $41,000 from the province. So quick math, that's about $110,000 short. Where does that money come from? It comes from Springwater. Or some grants and stuff, but there is a large portion that comes from Springwater. So thank you.
Yeah, I guess to me there's, and I think it is frustrating right now because, and I guess your financial statements are structured differently than your budget. So we can't totally compare apples to apples because if we strictly look at your financial statements, it tells a different story. But so, I mean, for me, I think the frustration is that everybody's going through a difficult year, not just the Conservation Authority. And I'm interested in hearing more, and perhaps this next question is directed to Councillor Cerna. It looks by your presentation that the board was offered a 1% scenario. So that I read between the lines there that the staff was willing to find a way to provide a 1% increase. And why would the board not consider that?
You talk percentages all the time, and I talk dollars, and that's the difference that we have. I don't think, like if you saw in the presentation, how much we're taking $117,000 out of reserves now. So why, you're either going to dig the hole deeper or you're going to try to help out a bit. And 3% to us is only 10 grand, split amongst 5 municipal partners, which isn't a whole lot. So 1% is, and I'd have to refer back to the general manager, how much dollars 1% would bring, but how much more that puts us short, how much more we have to borrow from our reserves. And that's why, like we had a master plan a few years ago, we realized then that we're going backwards. And we only have enough reserves to survive another 3 or 4 years. After that, holy cow, we're in trouble. So that's why we're trying to balance it out with like a $10,000 increase after all our expenses have increased isn't a whole lot, in my mind anyways. So that's why I know.
So
That's why I think we went with the 3%. To me, it's middle of the road.
yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, I will reserve the right at any point in the future to remind Councillor Cerna, it's only $10,000. And I think our ratepayers would take exception that every dollar counts. So even if it's only an extra $3,000, I'm pretty sure most people walk by $5 on the sidewalk would probably pick it up, because it's not nothing. So I want to be very clear, that's not nothing. And some of the reserves are not dedicated necessarily to mandatory programs. So my last question, so to me, where there's a will, there's a way. And for example, my question would be, how much does the Conservation Ontario subscription cost?
I think just off the top of my head, I think it's 20,000 a year. Christopher, you can back me up on that.
That's correct. In Conservation Ontario right now, it's more important than ever to show solidarity with the conservation authorities. They've done a fabulous job in communicating and lobbying the provincial government to at least get some concessions in terms of what just happened with the stripping of the powers of the Conservation Authority through Schedule 6.
But as you, if I may, as you pointed out, there's a $20,000 saving you could do for 1 year, and you would still benefit from the lobbying, which I believe, I guess, has not been as successful since, Bill 229 went through. But anyways, those are my thoughts. I do believe there's a will, there's a way. Other conservation authorities were able to stick to 1% as a show of solidarity. And those are my thoughts.
Okay, another comment, but Deputy Mayor, you're assuming that we use levy money to pay for Conservation Ontario. Now, we just said we're $120,000 short of our mandated programs. Now, you're correct in saying that Conservation Ontario is not a mandated program. But if we're taking that 20,000 from the profits of Springwater, that's not going to make a difference in our budget. You know what I mean? We're looking to have the township pay its share of the mandated programs that the government won't share. And you can't expect Springwater to, Catfish Creek to keep cutting our budget back, having the government cut our budget back without a little bit of an increase. And to dip into our reserves as heavy as we're doing, or as heavily as we're doing, is shows good fiscal management to begin with. And like we talk about that truck we're buying. We have a truck down there now that I told you that Fred Flintstone will be proud of. There's a big hole in the floor there. And it's just, we drive things to the ground down there. We stretch every penny we can. And you can only go so far doing that. You can only go so far doing that. So I don't think, I mean, that's one example you have, but I don't think that our 3% increase, everybody else is 1%, but that brings in a hell of a lot more than $10,000. Like, we're a small organization. We run a shoestring budget down there. I watched our CAO and my son put a pump together on their own, and nobody paid them for that. They're doing everything they can to stretch every dollar we got. And you can only go so far doing that, because if you quit doing that, you're going to end up in big trouble. And again, too, you call it 3%, I call it 10 grand. I agree the taxpayers don't agree with it, or maybe but I've never heard a complaint about it yet. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for either Chris or Councillor Cerna? Okay, thank you, Chris, for making that presentation. And I think there's sympathy for your position. And obviously, as Councillor Cerna said, you've kept it at 3% only by using a lot of your reserves, and you can't do that forever. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to make a comment to Mr. Wilkinson and Mr. Cerna. I appreciate each and every one of their endeavors to do what they are doing down in the Catfish Creek Conservation Authority to keep us in particular safe in Springfield and to keep the residents of Port Bruce safe and to look after all the problems and concerns in between. God forbid it does take money. So let's get that through our head. We don't do it for nothing. There's a lot of volunteers involved down there. So once again, I say a big thank you to Mr. Wilkinson and Mr. Cerna. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Max.
One more comment, Mr. Mayor.
All right, go ahead, Rick.
Thank you. I had the opportunity during the holidays to talk to one of our directors on Catfish Creek, the board of directors. He's from our representative from Southwest Oxford. And because of the COVID-19 restrictions, him and his wife said it was a pretty quiet Christmas day. So he went and took her down to show her Springwater Park. And they walked the trails. And he said it was so busy, so busy. And I mean, people do appreciate Springwater and what we do to keep it going. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rick. All right, I need a mover and second to the presentation from Chris Wilkinson, General Manager of Catfish Creek Conservation Authority, related to the authority's 2020 budget be received. Mover and seconder. Moved by Moore, seconder. Cerna. Glinski, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manal,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. Brent, you're up next.
Thanks, Chris.
Good night, Chris.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I have one report before you this evening, and that is the November activity report for Malahide Fire Services. I won't bother getting into the report other than to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Questions for Brent on his report?
Yeah, I'll ask one.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Brent. Brent, have the firefighters been involved with any COVID cases, and how has that been turning out, and how has it been handled?
Well, when COVID started in March, we did come up with a standard operating guideline for considerable PPE, the wearing of considerable PPE when we attend any medical call, whether it's screened as a COVID call or not. So there's all firefighters have to adhere to that. No one attends in a personal vehicle. We have switched from running our rescue truck to medical calls to being able to run our pumps. And the reason for that is because we can put more people in seats in that one vehicle. They won't leave the station unless there's 3 people in it, to a maximum of 5. So that they can prepare all their PPE in advance of getting to the call. Our ambulance dispatch center and through Tilsonburg screens every call for potential COVID symptoms. What we're seeing, certainly did in November, and we have very much so in December, seen from the ambulance dispatch center that folks are not screening positive, they're actually having issues because they've tested positive. So, but we have had 0 incidents. We've had 2 of our members that have had COVID and took the appropriate time off, but it was not related to the fire service whatsoever. So the proper PPE that we're wearing and the proper sanitation and disposal of everything upon returning to the fire hall seems to be working for us, and knock on wood, I hope it continues to do so and that we don't have any of our members exposed. But it's definitely, we definitely are seeing increased positive cases in Malahide.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thanks.
All our
Any other questions for Brent? Seeing none, mover and second report F20-15 entitled Emergency Services Activity Report, November be received. Cerna, seconder.
I'll second it.
Widner, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes,
carried.
thank you.
Keep up the good work, Brent.
Thanks.
Adam, are you doing the next one? Official plan?
Yes, I am, Your Worship. So through your Worship, I won't speak too much to this application. I'll keep it short. You'll see that Monteith Brown is getting their review back on track, and I do see that they have they seek to have their review done in short order by May of this year. I've also added a recent county planning manager's report about the provincial requirement for housing needs. So unless there's any further questions, there's nothing further to add to my report.
Thank you, Adam. Questions for Adam on the report? Seeing none, mover and seconder report number DS 2102 entitled Township Malahide Official Plan Comprehensive Review and 5-year updated status report be received for information. Mover and seconder. Lewis, seconder.
Second.
Winder, all in favor.
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. Arun, are you up for the water budget?
Yes, Your Worship. Okay. Good evening, Mayor Manil and members of council. Today I have the final two pieces of the 21 budget process. We have the water budget up first. The water budget for 21 proposes a rate increase as has been recommended in the water rate study for the 10-year period of starting 2014. As you will see in the section on the second page of the report, that there has been a steady-ish growth in the number of users. So the forecast that was included in the study seems to be coming true thus far. We have about 637 users in 2020. And this is very much close to the forecast where it predicts about 642 altogether by the end of 22. So we are getting there. So the budget for 21 presumes that there will be 5 more users added. And so it is based on the new rate and 642 users in 2021. Most of the expenditures are continuing as before. There have been adjustments made based on what we have experienced in the last few years. I have had discussions with the water manager and the director of public works, and there are certain expenditure items. For example, we had the sewer. Oh, I'm sorry, that is in the sewer budget. But so in the water budget, we are proceeding as expected in most areas. There are the way our system in the region works is that Malahide's water system is a tertiary system, and it works in connection with the 2 secondary water systems that we administer on behalf of the 2 water boards, and the primary, the Elgin Middlesex primary system. So our users are somewhat reliant on how those other systems operate and what expenses or plans are proposed along those lines as well. So there is a portion that would come to the Malahide system as a cost. Now, most of the expenses and revenues, I believe, the 2020 year-to-date actuals that are presented in the budget document are a snapshot at a point in time. This was a little before Christmas that the report was generated. So we do not have the final year-end numbers in there yet. So those numbers are still being finalized and will change when we bring the year-end close financial statements and the year-end status report to council at another time in the next couple of months. So based on that, that was the operating budget. So the transfer to reserve that is budgeted in there is a tentative number at this time. It is subject to the revenues that we actually receive based on usage and based on number of users, as well as the actual expenditures that we see come through. If there is a significant repair or a significant line breakage that requires a large expense, then some of our operating expenditures can be higher in certain years as opposed to others. And that would then affect how we are able to manage any savings for life cycle replacement projects, and that will be coming up fairly soon in the future. On the capital budget side, we have a few small items. As you will see in the summary, which is on page 77 of your agenda package, that there is a summary of the expenses in capital that were budgeted for 2019 and which actually occurred in 2019, and then the same for 2020. We have been proposing a significant amount of funds for the Talbot Street project, but that is still an ongoing project that is still being fully scoped out and developed. So as a result, although we had a large amount budgeted in 2019 in the expectation that we would be able to move forward in that year, there were certain complications that have since come forward. And as a result, we are still working on that. So that project is still in its pre-engineering kind of stages. So based on those operating and capital expenditures, we would put money to reserves. And at this point in time, the reserves for Malahide Water are around about 240,000 base. It's not a very high number. Our capital asset base for Malahide Water is in the range of 2.5 million. So this amount is a fairly small portion as a percentage of that asset base. Fortunately, a larger portion of those capital assets are well functioning, and it's not, as you can see from the sparse capital budget, even now, that there are not any big ticket items that need to be attended to right away. So we can survive with this money, and we do need to build those reserves so that when the time comes, we will be able to manage the need without any reliance on any other sources of financing. Then the last attachment to your for the water budget report is the user fee schedule. These are, this is again put forward for council approval. The user rate as proposed is 75.40 for the base charge, and then 4.34 for the metered consumption-based charge. I'm open to any questions, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Questions for Aaron on the water budget? Dominique?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, I'll start. So a couple questions. So maybe I'll start with, so the total operation costs appear to be, the actuals appear to be very close to what was planned. So that's great. I think it's in the 3 to 4% range. But the revenue is in the last 2 years is much more than what was anticipated. And so what I'm noticing is that then we're putting that surplus in reserves. So we already had a plan for a reserve, like a significant, so each year there is a planned contribution to a reserve. So I'm assuming that is based on our asset management plan and life cycle replacement. So, but now that we get a surplus, we're putting even more in the reserve. So should I read into that what we had planned was not enough?
Through Your Worship, to an extent, yes, the estimates would have been based on a certain pattern of growth and what kind of consumption or what kind of number of users you would see growing each year. So in certain years, there may be higher metered consumption resulting in higher revenue on that side. And in other years, there may not be the same high level of consumption, which will not lead to the higher amount of revenue. So it's entirely dependent, because just because we have an increased number of connections may not necessarily lead to more revenue. It would be subject to when those connections are actually active and usage begins by that user. So when the study was done in 2014 and estimates were developed, they would have the forecast was based on certain estimates or certain activity that had been seen at the time, and so it would naturally be a little on the conservative side. You cannot expect higher revenues. That's not sensible accounting or just practical, realistic planning at all. So that's why there is a little bit of a higher ability to put money into reserves.
I guess if I may follow up, Mr. Mayor, my question is not so much about, yeah, like the surplus is a bonus, so to speak. I know we can't count on a surplus every year, but my question, but when we do have a surplus, so in the last 2 years, why are we using that surplus to top up our existing plan in reserve? We have a reserve plan, because I can see that there's reserves budgeted every year. So I guess what's not clear to me, what is our capital plan? Because right now, like you mentioned, we're sitting on 240,000. We will be adding to it this year. But there's no view in that budget. Like I don't remember even the asset management plan seeing what is our maybe our 10-year view or 5 or 6 year view of why we need that much money. And I don't mind, I've said it all along, I don't mind reserves, but it would be nice to correlate the amount of reserves and how we justify using a surplus to top up the planned already generous reserve transfer, to how we justify that. So, and now I guess to that, I've been doing a lot of research, like trying to piece things together so that it is as clear and as transparent for all of our ratepayers. And I did come across the Malahide water financial plan, which is like the 6-year plan. That's my understanding is regulated, and that we have to submit to the province. And so the budget we're looking at today is slightly different. Like it reflects several adjustments that we're making to that plan. So would it be appropriate to be looking at that plan that's submitted to the province, and I think spells out the reserves a little bit more clearly? So like, I know it's 2 questions folded into one. What is our asset plan, and what about this financial plan submitted to the province?
Through your worship, the financial plan that we submit to the province is a provincial requirement for our water license renewal. It is something that is required every 5 years, and it is in a format that is that comes to us from them. It is more in the form of an audited financial statement rather than an annual budget document. As a result, you will see it is different, most certainly. And if you had the chance to look at the report that accompanied that financial plan last year, we had also said that this plan is a dynamic document, which means it's not static. If we have quoted numbers in there, those are our planned, our estimated, our forecasted revenues and expenditures, and that we will have to come to council every year to present our annual budget and make changes or make adjustments based on what we have seen through the year. So when we presented and submitted the 2020 onwards financial plan. It was presented in October 2019, which means that even the entire 2019 year was not complete. So our estimates as to what we will stand at when we begin 2020 even were estimates. They were not real numbers at that point. They were close, but they were not exact. So there will be a difference from what you see as quoted for example, for the surplus amount, which was quoted in the 2020 financial plan, compared to what you see in this attached document as the estimate for 2020. And again, I would say that the number you see even now in the 2020 year-to-date column is going to change within the next month or so, because we are receiving invoices, we are finishing up our final billings to the consumers. And so those numbers are definitely going to change even from what you see in the document in front of you today. Secondly, the capital assets, as you have seen in that 2020 financial plan, those were our assets. And there would have been a plan that was presented when the water rate study was prepared. And there was also an addendum to the 2018 asset management plan, wherein we had spoken to which of the assets in Malahide water and sewer would need immediate attention. And as based on that, I have presented in tonight's council report that there were certain items that had been identified as high or medium risk, and those were the capital assets that were immediately attended to in the last few years. As a result, the risk factor on them has been reduced from a high to a medium, or from a medium to a low. And so the immediate priority items have been addressed. Other items, as they come up in the next, there is, as you can see, because our immediate capital budget for 21, or if you have, when you have looked at the 2020 financial plan, the 5-year capital budget did not have a huge amount of capital asset replacements, but following that, there will be further on replacements. Another aspect to managing our Malahide water system is that we work in partnership or under the oversight of Aqua. As a result, there are some recommendations that come forward from them regarding our capital assets. So that also is an influencing factor in the whole decision-making process. And I will also ask the Director of Public Works if he wishes to add anything. But the capital asset plan has been presented in the past, I would believe. It would have been before my time. But when we did the financial plan, there was a summary in there which showed what our assets are and what our proposed capital budget for the 5-year is also included in that capital plan. So that presentation was brought forward previously to council. If there are any significant changes from that, we would come forward to council with specific reports, as we did when there were issues with the Talbot line project, for example. And I see Matt has come online. Matt, if you want to add anything to that.
Matt?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Your Worship, to you, Ms. Deputy Mayor. I think you do bring up a good point when it comes to asset management, because it provides, I'd say, the right answers to not only what's affordable, but what's reasonable to afford. So, for example, as the treasurer has mentioned, the water main replacement on Highway 3, which was tendered for $1 million over budget. A change like that wouldn't have been contemplated during a prior water rate study or preparation of an asset management plan at that time, largely due to massive rising construction costs and things like that. But new asset management initiatives that we're undertaking per OREG 588 do help to create a more dynamic response to these types of changing environments. So for the larger transfer to reserves than planned, I'm a big champion of that, considering where things are going and our limited ability to respond to those events at this time. But partner with that. I can strongly confirm that I've seen both township staff and Aqua staff go above and beyond in trying to save money for the system, recognizing these concerns, and those being largely due to personal passions and responsibility for the system. So I think, yeah, in summary, I think that the asset management initiatives are on their way, but I'm very pleased to see these types of transfers to reserves, noticing the environment that we're in now.
Thanks, Matt. Go ahead, Arun.
If I may add, I would appreciate the deputy mayor's concerns about transfers to reserves exceeding our plans if we were sitting on a $5 or $10 million surplus balance in our reserves already. Considering how thin we are and the cost of any water main or water appurtenance replacement, even $1 more than plan is still $1 more, and it would help keep the system on an even keel and allow things to be tackled when they are truly critically needed, rather than as an emergency, we have to do this, we have to beg, borrow, or steal from any bank or the Infrastructure Ontario or anywhere and try and manage our situation.
Okay, thanks, Arun.
Mr. Mayor, if I can comment and add just a little bit of clarification. Again, my point is not, and my comment is not directed at, we're spending too much, or is that when we're saving more than we initially planned, I want to be able to explain why. So I'm looking for a simple answer to what are you saving for? And so that should be very transparent, and to say, we need this much for emergency. We need a good practice is X percentage of your total asset. And plus we have this plan we already know over the next 10 years of the life cycle of these assets. Like that, this is not my business, so I'm making this up. But do you see what I mean? Like, to me, it's, if I get the question of why are we saving, period, and then why are we saving even more than what we had planned? In other words, you're continuing to increase my rates while you're increasing your surpluses. I want to be able to defend what those surpluses and those reserves are for. And I will defend it if there's a plan, and I totally believe that everything is being done properly, but it's not obvious. That's all I'm looking for. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for either Arun or Matt? Mark?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment, and probably Chester and Max can maybe back me up on this, but years and years ago, we were told you're supposed to have a dollar percentage of your assets in reserves, because not having enough money is not an excuse. They don't want to hear that. And that's going back to the Walkerton area. But I've been on long enough, I remember that statement and never forgot it. Now, does that still hold true today? That you have, it wouldn't take long to blow 240,000 if we had a major line repair, but does that number still hold true, that we're supposed to have a certain percentage? Or I think at the time they told us you should have enough to replace it all, which I thought was crazy, but that's the statement that was made at that time. So
you're absolutely right, Councillor Whitner.
Yeah, you remember that?
I certainly do. And it's going through my mind as Dominique is going through her concerns there, that we have to have so much in there. And the older the system gets, that amount has to be higher, because the risk is greater for failure, either in the sewage system or in your water system. And in the water piping, Matt will back me up on this, I'm sure. On number 3 highway east of Elmer, there's a strip in there we had to replace because it's been there so long. There's another strip there that is going, in my understanding, day by day before it has to be replaced. Let's go to Port Burwell, Port Bruce area, down Nova Scotia line. There's a strip in there. Every once in a while, there's a major section of it blows out. That piping has been in there since back in the early 70s. It was put in there at the time to bring water to the proposed DeFasco situation that was going to be built west of Port Burwell. So there are great risks out there. And it's also my understanding, to go back what you brought up, Councillor Whitner, that there has to be a percentage of what the value of that system is worth in reserves to cover any deficiencies.
Thanks, Matt. Any other questions for Arun or Matt?
Mayor Manel, I have a question.
Go ahead, Jess.
I see on page 77, life cycle reserve. What's the difference between life cycle reserve and reserves? Or is
Arun?
there?
To your worship, Councillor Glinsky, it's simply my attempt to make it a little clearer that these reserves are for the express purpose of replacement of assets when they come to the end of their life cycle, when they come to the end of their useful life. That's what I was trying to say there. That's all.
Okay, and when I see 2019 actual into reserves, 166,000, and for 2021, another 190,000, and for 2020, 181,000. Have we taken money out of this reserve for anything? We
Through
must
your
have.
worship. Yes, so through your worship, Councillor Glinsky, the next chart underneath that particular line, which shows the capital budget, those items would be funded from the reserve. So that's where we would have used a portion of what is there in the reserve. So, so when we transferred money based on what was a surplus of revenues over our operating expenditures, a portion of that would be used for any capital projects that we have undertaken during that year as well.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Arun or Matt?
So, Mr. Mayor, can I formally request a presentation on our plan on so if there is in fact a legislation that dictates the percentage amount, like a summary presentation, because I know we have reports from 2018, we have presentations from 2019, we have today's presentation, and it's very difficult to keep track, and I don't know if it's fair to expect like that we can easily piece it all together. So like a summary presentation to say, this is why we have these reserves. And this part is legislated, this part is good practice, this part is whatever.
Is that something we can do, Arun?
Certainly, your worship, if that's what council wishes, I would suggest that we have already indicated during the budget discussion process that we will be coming forward in 2021 with more discussions and reports on asset management plans for the township. So the sewer and water would have been part of that as well.
Okay, I'm satisfied
yeah,
if it's coming up later.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, mover and seconder, report number FIN 2001, entitled Draft Malahide Water 2021 Budget. User fee schedule be received. And the draft Malahide Water 2021 budget and the user rate for 21 be approved. Municipal staff be authorized to carry out administrative acts necessary to implement such budgets and user rates as approved.
Move it.
Moved by Moore, seconder.
I'll second it.
Cerna, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the sewer rates. You're doing that again, Arun?
Yes, your worship. I don't think I have a choice. The sewer budget is similar to the water budget. We have our a limited group of consumers that use our sewer system, and as outlined in the report, we have seen reasonable growth as was forecast, and our revenues and expenses are trending quite reasonably close to budget. Again, 2020 numbers are yet to be finalized. So those actuals are not even like they are what they were at the time the report was being developed. So those numbers will change again, which will result in the amount of transfer finally happening to reserves changing a little bit. We have had some, we have proceeded with capital budgets that we had planned, except for the OPC pump station it's a different whole project that will come to fruition at some point, hopefully this year. And the other projects that are proposed for 21 are included in the capital budget in front of you. If there are any questions, I won't go into too much detail. It's very much similar to what was discussed for the water budget.
Okay, thanks, Arun. Questions for Arun on the sewer system? Seeing none.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I will just say that the same comments apply to, so as far as the reporting and making the information more transparent, a little bit clearer would be great as part of future presentation. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll deal with that when we have our asset management review. Mover and second report number FIN 2002 entitled Draft Malahide Sewer System 21 Budget and User Fees be received. The draft Malahide Sewer System budget and user fees for 21 be approved. The municipal staff be authorized to carry out the administrative acts necessary to implement such budgets and user fees as approved. Mover and seconder.
Jiguer, I'll move.
Jiguer, seconded by Moore. All in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jiguer,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes.
carried.
Thank you. Next, we have correspondence. There's 17 items. Anyone wish to make comment or support for any of the following items? There's no burning issues. Mover and second to receive and file, please.
I'll move it.
Moved by Widner, seconder,
I'll second it.
Cerna, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jiguer,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. Okay, who's dealing with the icon application? Are you Michelle or is that Arun?
Your worship, I can speak to the resolution. Council will recall that we talked just at our last meeting before Christmas that staff were in the process of submitting an application for icon funding to assist us with the broadband connectivity project that we're contemplating for later this year. In order to submit the application, there is a council resolution of support that is required, and there is a draft resolution that has been prepared by staff, and we're looking for council's endorsement of that so that we can complete the application process.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Questions for Michelle on this one? Seeing none, mover and seconder, the Council of the Township of Malahide does hereby endorse and support a funding application to the Ontario Minister of Infrastructure under Improving Connectivity for Ontario program to enhance broadband connectivity to the township's facility, as well as provide the ability to connect homes and businesses through a last mile network.
I'll move it.
Lewis, seconder.
Jiguer.
Jiguer, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore, Councillor Moore, Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jiguer,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. And Michelle, you're dealing with the next letter?
Your worship, I can speak to it briefly. As council is aware, the Port Bruce Ratepayers Association had submitted a request for council before Christmas as well, asking for consideration that the temporary boat launch that was installed in Port Bruce, that it be maintained even after the permanent bridge has been opened and reinstated. We've received correspondence now from North Erie Marina indicating that they have concerns with that continuation if the township was to move forward with that. The letter is attached for your information. Copy of this letter actually is a copy of a letter that has been submitted to the County of Elgin. And my understanding is County Council will be receiving it at their meeting next week.
Okay, thanks.
So it's for council's information at this point, your worship, unless you wish to take any further action. Council did ask staff to review and report back whether or not we had recommendations, issues, or concerns with respect to maintaining and keeping that boat launch after the fact.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. And I can add to that, I've had at least 2 other calls that in regard to the boat launch that were not in favor of it. And certainly we're looking at their legal position in regard to the boat launch. Do we need staff to do any more research into this? Really, this is a county position. I think the ratepayers were looking for endorsement from the township, but do we need to spend any more time, staff time on this?
Your worship, just to clarify, council has asked for a report from staff. Staff have had some preliminary discussions with county staff. I believe county staff were having further consultations with the Ministry of Natural Resources, although I don't believe there's been any specific answers given at this point in time. But at this stage, staff have been given direction by this council to continue to review the situation and come back to council with our recommendations or issues or concerns related to it. If council is of a different mindset now and doesn't require that staff report, then you can simply provide that direction to staff and we wouldn't proceed. Otherwise, staff will be reporting back to you at a future meeting with the results of the research that's being undertaken.
What's your wishes, ladies and gentlemen? Do we need to still research this to come back with a report?
Well, I believe there is a resolution to that effect. We would have to rescind that resolution for that staff report. So no, I think we need Malahide's position. I understand there's one component, that's the county, but the actual decision, once the property is returned to Malahide, then to me, I think it's a Malahide position, and I think we should pursue the resolution that we already passed.
Okay, point made. There is a resolution on or in our books that we do bring a report back, so we'll follow that up. Any other questions or comments on the correspondence? Mover and seconder, correspondence received from Barduty Law dated January 4th, 2021, related to the temporary boat launch in Port Bruce and North Erie Marina be received, and that such correspondence be referred to the municipal staff and further review. Consideration being noted, the staff will be reporting back to the council at a future meeting regarding the proposal of the Port Bruce Ratepayers Association to maintain the temporary boat launch in Port Bruce. Mover and seconder.
Jaguar, I'll move.
Jaguar, seconder.
Second it.
Widner, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore, Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
No.
Councillor Kolinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes.
carried.
Okay, any other business before we go to bylaws?
New business?
Certainly.
Yeah, just that one. Township's had a pretty rough time with all the COVID and everything, and over the holidays, I noticed there's a whole lot of Christmas lights were up, and they put on probably a lot more than they've ever put up, and they were on for a lot longer. So I just want to thank all the residents of Malahide, because it just kind of made everything a little cheerier around the area. So thank you to all of them. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Anything else under new business? Okay, bylaws. Mover and seconder, bylaw number 2101, being a bylaw to authorize the temporary borrowing during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2021, be given a first, second, third reading, properly signed and sealed.
Move it.
Moore, seconder. Lewis, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jager,
yes,
Mayor Manal,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. And mover and seconder, bylaw number 2105, being a bylaw to adopt the 2021 township budget, be given a first, second, third reading, properly signed and sealed.
I'll move it.
Cerna, seconder. Lewis, all in favor?
Now, and before we vote on it,
Pardon me? Go ahead, Jeff.
and my question is, several meetings ago, we had a counselor with line items that were in need of explaining, and that was kind of just gone over and never explained. How can we be voting on the budget when questions that were ready to be asked at that time were not answered?
Well, the majority of council were satisfied with the budget presentation and the rate.
Well, I'm not talking about the rate right now. I'm talking about line items that were not explained.
I think everything was gone over.
I'm afraid it wasn't.
Any other questions or comments on the our budget? Obviously, we've thrashed that to death for about the last 3 months. Are we ready? We did get a mover, right?
Yes,
Did we get a seconder?
yes, we did.
Okay, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
Oh,
Deputy Mayor Jager,
no,
Mayor Manal,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. And
Your
another,
worship, I think we missed one bylaw on bylaw number 2102 for an interim tax levy, unless I missed the discussion.
no, it was stuck together.
Oh, you're
Thank you.
right. Preston.
And mover and seconder bylaw 2102, being a bylaw to provide for an interim tax levy for the year 2021. Be given a first, second, and third reading, properly signed and sealed.
Move it.
Moved by Moore, seconder
Second it.
Lewis, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
yes.
Deputy Mayor Jager,
yes,
Mayor Manal,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. And mover and seconder bylaw number 2106, being a bylaw to establish various fire cost recovery fees. Be given a first, second, third reading, properly signed and sealed. Mover and seconder,
I'll move it.
Widner, seconder,
I'll second it.
Cerna, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jager,
yes,
Mayor Manal,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. And other bylaw, mover and seconder bylaw number 2107, being a bylaw to establish various user fees. Be given a first, second, third reading and properly signed and sealed. Lewis, seconder. Don't be shy, seconder.
I'll second it.
Cerna, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jager,
yes,
Mayor Manal,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. And finally, mover and seconder bylaw number 2108, being a bylaw to establish various building permit fees. We get a first, second, third reading and properly signed and sealed.
Jager, I'll move.
Jager and Lewis, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jiguer,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. And anything else for open session? Seeing none. Mover and second, the council move into closed session at 9:10 pursuant to section 239-2 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss the following: litigation or potential litigation matter, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting a township relating to zoning bylaw infraction, automotive body shop. And two, a litigation, potential litigation matter, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the township relating to a zoning bylaw infraction, dog kennels. So mover and seconder for close, please.
Move it.
Lewis and Moore, all in favor?
Counselor Woodner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jiguer,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. You good? Okay. Now that we're in open session, I need a mover and seconder, bylaw number 2103 being a confirmatory bylaw, be given a first, second, third reading, properly signed and sealed.
Move it.
Moore,
Seconder.
Cerna, all in favor?
Counselor Woodner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
No.
Deputy Mayor Jiguer,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. And finally, mover and second, the council adjourn its meeting at 9:52 to meet again on January 21st at 7:30. Galinsky and Widner, all in favor?
Counselor Woodner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jiguer,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. Thank you, folks. Stay safe. Good night.
Yeah,
Good night.
thanks.
Have a
Again.
night.